Okay, welcome to This Explainer, and today we're doing something a little bit unconventional. We are exploring Central Perk Noir reframing Friends as a drama. To kick things off, I want you to try something with me. Imagine the lights dimming on literally the most comforting, familiar TV show ever made. Picture that iconic bright purple apartment, right? But the colors are muted. The jokes, they're barely landing. And those classic conversations between the characters, they don't end with a massive burst of infectious laughter anymore. They just end in this heavy, lingering silence. The camera doesn't quickly cut away to the next scene to save you from the awkwardness. It just stays there. It holds on the tension. Today we're taking a super familiar cultural touchstone and looking at it through a completely different, much darker lens.
So the big question, what if Friends wasn't a sitcom? Like, what if it was genuinely shot and written as a drama? Suddenly, the ground totally shifts under our feet. With this one simple perspective flip, every single breakup, every missed career opportunity, every lonely night sitting in a tiny New York City apartment, it all feels fundamentally different. For 10 whole seasons, this show was basically the ultimate pillar of comedy, mainly because it made the really heavy stuff in life feel, well, a lot lighter. Heartbreak always arrived with a punchline right next to it. But underneath those jokes, hiding in plain sight for an entire decade, was a radically different story. Let's look at the actual foundation of what we were watching all those years.
Okay, let's dive into this. Just consider the core premise for a second. We're talking about 6 people in their 20s and 30s trying to build careers totally from scratch. They're surviving massive economic and social uncertainty. They're desperately trying to find love, painfully losing long-term relationships, and ultimately just trying to figure out who they actually are. When you strip away that comforting laugh track, man, that is not a comedy setup. That is literally the exact blueprint of a heavy, intense character drama. The original show simply made a choice, right? They chose warmth over emotional intensity. But if it had been a drama from the get-go, our entire emotional experience of these 6 people would radically change. Let's start with the character who I think might actually change the most.
Let's just slow down a second and really look at Ross Geller. In the reality we know, the sitcom reality, Ross's failed marriages are just running gags. We laugh at his awkwardness, and his jealousy creates this sort of bouncy, comedic tension. But in our drama reality, wow, Ross becomes this man desperately trying to piece his life back together after some truly catastrophic losses. Every single moment with Rachel wouldn't carry that playful, will they, won't they vibe. It would carry this immense, almost suffocating pressure. Think about the infamous "we were on a break" argument. In a drama, that is absolutely not one of pop culture's funniest relationship debates. It becomes a deeply tense, incredibly uncomfortable study of broken trust and emotional immaturity. He doesn't look ridiculous anymore, you know? He just looks incredibly, painfully human. Consider this thought. His divorce wouldn't be a setup for jokes, it would feel like grief. Think about the sheer emotional weight of that. The entire series kicks off with his wife leaving him. If we shift the genre, we aren't chuckling at his misfortune. We're sitting in the room with a man in deep mourning for the life and the family he was so sure he was going to have. It completely rewires our empathy for him.
And then, of course, there's Rachel. In the sitcom world, Rachel leaving her whole life behind at the altar and finding her independence, it feels super exciting, right? Inspiring even. But, okay, step into the drama reality for a second. I want you to imagine moving to New York City with absolutely no plan. Zero money, no real-world skills. You are entirely dependent on your friends, feeling completely lost while watching literally everyone else around you seem way more put together and successful. That transition is absolutely terrifying. Her career journey wouldn't be this fun, upbeat montage. It would be quiet, lonely nights staring up at the ceiling, wondering if she just made a massive, life-ruining mistake. Every single job rejection would sting profoundly. And her whole romance with Ross, it wouldn't feel like destiny. It would feel like a very messy complication that she is nowhere near ready for.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly the shift for our next character, Monica. In the sitcom, her competitiveness and that quirky perfectionism are hilarious. We laugh out loud when she loses her mind over someone moving an ottoman. But remove the laugh track. Look closely at the drama reality. Now, you're watching a woman who constantly feels like she has to prove her worth to everyone, especially her incredibly critical parents. She is terrified of uncertainty. So what does she do? She attempts to desperately control every tiny, microscopic detail of her environment, because the real world outside just feels unbearable. Her cozy, welcoming apartment suddenly feels a lot more like a carefully, almost obsessively managed quarantine zone against the sheer chaos of life. Which brings us right to Chandler. In the sitcom, he's the funny guy.
His sarcastic one-liners are there to perfectly balance out Monica's high-strung energy. But in our dramatic reframing, oh man, his jokes aren't just funny quirks. They are absolute textbook defense mechanisms. In a drama, Chandler actually becomes arguably the most relatable, grounded character of the entire group. Why? Because we are watching a man who literally cannot handle vulnerability. He cracks jokes because silence feels physically dangerous to him. As long as people are laughing, they aren't looking closely at his pain. Because if you think about it, underneath all that trademark sarcasm, Chandler was already carrying one of the darkest backstories of the bunch. We're talking about a deep fear of commitment, a crippling fear of abandonment, and a childhood completely defined by parents whose chaotic relationship left profound emotional scars. He's not just a wise guy. He is a deeply wounded person using his wit as a shield so nobody can ever hurt him again.
And then we have Joey. Our beloved sitcom reality tells us Joey is this lovable, endlessly optimistic, carefree guy who just really loves sandwiches and women. But look at the drama reality. It's actually really sobering. Joey becomes a struggling, aging actor watching the best years of his life just slip right past him. He's standing there watching his closest friends build careers, build savings accounts, build actual lives while his own career completely stalls out. Think about those constant auditions, the nonstop rejections, just sitting in an empty apartment waiting for the phone to ring. Without a laugh track there to assure us that everything's going to be fine, Joey's life is actually incredibly stressful and heartbreaking.
Smiling in public, questioning himself in private. In a drama, Joey's trademark sitcom optimism isn't just ignorance, and it definitely isn't stupidity. It transforms into this deep, quiet, absolutely necessary emotional resilience. He literally has to keep smiling, because the alternative is giving up on his dream.
Now, what's really interesting about this reframing is how it changes Phoebe. Sitcom reality, she's got these strange stories, she sings funny songs, she's charmingly unpredictable. She brings the chaotic energy, right? But drama reality, actually, let's think about her literal canon backstory. Her mother took her own life, her father abandoned her, she lived on the streets, she has a history of profound loss, instability, and deep trauma. Comedy takes that history and spins it into quirky charm. But a drama would force us to really sit with it. Her eccentricity wouldn't be random at all. It would be a profound coping mechanism. It's the conscious, daily choice of a woman creating her own weird, beautiful light because she has survived incredible darkness.
But, if we zoom out from the characters themselves, the biggest difference of all might actually be the setting, the city of New York itself. In the sitcom reality, New York feels incredibly warm. It's this playground of bright coffee shops and impossibly huge, comforting apartments. But in our drama reality, New York reverts to what it actually is for most struggling 20-somethings, an enormous, crowded, wildly expensive, and incredibly lonely metropolis. It's a city where millions of people are just furiously paddling, trying desperately not to fall behind and drown.
Which completely redefines the most iconic location of the show, Central Perk. It completely ceases to be just a quirky hangout spot where they drink out of ridiculously giant mugs. It becomes a vital emotional sanctuary. It is a warm, safe place in a cold, lonely city. Think of it as a mandatory daily checkpoint where these 6 struggling people gather to physically remind each other that they aren't alone in the world. It is quite literally their life raft.
And, maybe that brings us to the most beautiful, strange truth of this whole explainer. The show already had dramatic stories. It just chose optimism. That is the true magic of comfort media. Life outside our front doors already gives us enough uncertainty, enough grief, enough fear. This show took the very real, very heavy, everyday struggles of early adulthood, and it actively chose to make them manageable. It chose to make them funny. It chose to make them shared.
So the crucial point is perfectly captured in this idea right here. Sometimes the difference between heartbreak and hope is simply how the story is told. The writers took the raw materials of a gritty, anxious drama, and through the pure alchemy of genre and perspective, they gave us a comedy that millions of people still return to when they just need to feel safe.
I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to chew on today. If Friends had been made as a drama instead of a sitcom, if it was exactly as we just described it, would you still watch it? Honestly, would it have lasted 10 years or would it have just been way too heavy? And of the 6 of them, who do you really think would change the most without that laugh track behind them? Take a moment today to reflect on your own relationship with the media you use for comfort.
Think about what's hiding just beneath the surface of your favorite shows. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and until next time, I'll be there for you.